Good morning, everybody. Wow, the crowd got quiet very, very quickly. That's very impressive. I'm Eric Schwartz, the Dean of the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and it is a real pleasure to welcome you to the Humphrey School for this important meeting. I've only been in Minnesota for about a year, and when I arrived here, I learned very quickly that there are 7:30 meetings in the Midwest, which is a little earlier even than Washington. And Washington D.C. is known as a early morning city. New York is a later city, but this is even earlier than Washington. I also want to thank the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, the Minneapolis Foundation, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, Immigration Works USA, the Minnesota Business Immigration Coalition, and the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota for their involvement in this morning's event. I think this is an appropriate forum for this discussion for a couple of reasons. First, I think that our namesake here at the Humphrey School, Hubert Humphrey, embodied the ideal of inclusion, of openness, of respect for individuals and groups from a wide variety of circumstances and parts of the world. I also think this is an appropriate forum because the Twin Cities are a laboratory for the evolution of the character of our own society in terms of the degree of diversity which is increasingly a part of our everyday life, and in terms of a community of stakeholders and service providers who by and large, and this isn't true in all parts of our country, but who by and large have looked at this challenge with a spirit of openness and frankly benevolence, which I think offers a real symbol for the rest of the country. The work that you're doing here and that you're going to be discussing today is extraordinarily important because there is no question that the policies, both articulated and implicit, of our nation in terms of immigration, relatively inclusive and open, have helped and will have helped the United States of America not only become a more diverse and enriched society, but also enable us, and they are enabling us, to avoid some of the very serious social challenges relating to social insurance and new generations of individuals who will support older generations of individuals. Those policies are enabling us to avoid the challenges, the problems, the existential dilemmas that are confronting societies in Europe and older developed societies in Asia. But the case needs to be made continually, forcefully, and supported by the kind of analytical research and data that is reflected in the work you're doing. So it is indeed a real joy to welcome you, and without further ado, let me turn the podium over to Sandy Vargas. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dean Schwartz. I just want to say good morning to everyone. I know that 7:30 is early, but here we all are, ready to have a great discussion about the whole question of immigration reform. And as Dean Schwartz said, this is a very important discussion. It's not only important because we want inclusion, we want equity, we want those values to continue on in Minnesota, but it is critically important to the economic future that Minnesota and the Midwest has. And I think as we think about the economic frame this morning, we really want to understand deeply about what happens if we don't change anything and what kind of changes do we need to make. I have to say, and I just want to say to Craig, there is excellent work being done by the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and I'll have Craig come up in a moment, at the regional level. And this is, I think, a visionary effort where the Council on Global Affairs has really pulled 45 leaders together. I happen to sit on that. Kathy Fenley sits on that committee. And it is really drilling deeply into the question of what do we mean, what kind of immigration reform do we have now, what do we need in the future in order to move the ball forward. I think probably the most visionary part of it, and Craig will speak to this, is really reaching out to Midwestern leaders, business leaders, civic leaders, government leaders, to say, yes, this is an economic imperative for the Midwest. We need to move forward on the issue of immigration reform. So this morning, I just want to say, and this is how it'll go, we have a national figure that I'm very pleased to introduce, Tamar Jacoby, and she will begin the discussion with the research and the discussions that she's had in, I think it's the 8 regional forums that we've had around the Midwest. So you will hear Tamar talking about what do other states, what do other communities think about immigration reform, especially from the business perspective, especially from that economic perspective. And as you know, as you've read, Tamar is a national figure. She's a journalist, she's an author, and senior fellow at the New America Foundation. I also want to say welcome to Tamar to Minnesota. We have this weather that is beautiful out there, specifically for you to come forward and meet with us. And so I want to give a big welcome to Tamar, but after Tamar, we will go into more of a panel discussion where we'll have Kathy Fenley, who's a professor here at the Humphrey School. We'll have Bill Blazer, a vice president with the Minnesota Chamber, and John Keller, who is the CEO of the Immigrant Law Center, talking about what Tamar has to say, reacting to that, but also talking about what is going on here locally in Minnesota. And I know that we've got guests from out of state. I just want to say welcome to those folks from Wisconsin that have come this morning, and welcome to all of you. So with that, please help me welcome Tamar Jacoby. Thank you very much.